why don't we go ahead and get started, if that's okay with everybody? So, obviously, I'm Jerry Brown, KK7GAB, and the purpose of this is to really just give you a very high level overview of what Winlink is. So I'm not going to be going into things like settings or anything like that. What we're going to cover. What is Winlink? How does it work? What equipment do I need? Which is always the big question. But once again, we're not going to be giving specifics of what setting I need on what radio to get that to work. So at the end, please write down your questions and I'll take them at the end, although I might see your hand up. So, in a nutshell, WinLink is a way to send emails over the radio waves. That's all it is. And if you know anything very basic about electronics, I'm going to tell you that what you're going to need is an A to D and a D day because we're going to transmit this stuff and convert it. So,
The matters, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
whoever that is, can you mute yourself?
We're talking.
Okay.
Okay. So, this is from winlink.org. This is some page you should really think about going to because it's got all the facts and everything. WinLink Global Radio Email is a network of amateur radio and authorized government stations that provide worldwide radio email using radio pathways where the internet is not present. Now that's kind of confusing because as we move along, we're going to find out that we normally do want to have internet. I'm going to close this window, I think. Nope. So WinLink uses an application called WinLink Express that runs on Windows to create, send, and receive emails. So very much like Apple Mail or what is it in Office? I can't think of what it is. It's just an application that runs on Windows.
Outlook.
Outlook, that's the one. Now, that doesn't mean that it's only on Windows because iOS has an application and that application is Radio Mail, and Android uses one. And I know Matt was trying to get it working. I don't know if he ever did. And that application is WOAD. Here's the thing that takes a lot of getting used to. For those of us who have been in computers a long time, the original protocol for emails was POP, which stands for Post Office Protocol. And what that means, it's just like walking into a post office box and removing the mail from your box. If you're new, or the newer protocol is called Simple Mail Transport Program Protocol, and that one leaves it on the server. So if I want to use it on my Mac or on Windows or my iPhone or my Android devices, until I actually delete it, it's still there. But this is the thing to get used to. Once you use the POP protocol, your email is gone. Okay, How it works is fairly simple. The Winlink Express application is going to convert the information into something your ham radio can take, and that's going to talk to a server. The server is a radio message server. That radio message server then talks to the internet. And the internet sends it to something called a common message server. This is the email server that all over the world everybody uses to transmit emails on the server side of the internet. Let's see, I thought I saw a hand up here. Okay, I won't talk about that. Okay, now going backwards, once you log in to your, once you log into Winlink, it's going to send a message when it talks to the RMS, and the RMS is going to send a message to the internet cloud to the common message server, and that is going to use the post office protocol to retrieve any emails that may be addressed to you. So once again, once you use this interface, you've taken the mail out of the system. So what happens here is Winlink creates the email. We send it over ham radio to an RMS server. Then the RMS server, we forward the email over the internet to the content message server. So in this mode, which is the normal mode, we do need the internet. And during a disaster, like the tornadoes and everything that went on over on the east and the south, the idea is to get the message out of the local area to an RMS that can route it over the internet to the receiving station. So while they do talk about the fact that it sends the email over radio waves, there still is the internet involved. Hopefully, we just get it out of our area to a RMS that can route it. During the recent disasters, there was a lot of use of Winlink emails over HF. So, meaning the 10 to 80 meter high frequency bands. We're all used to using it here locally using the VHS, the 2 meter band. But actually, that isn't all we have in the area. Lane County Sheriff's Amateur Radio Organization actually are the people that support the RMS servers in the Eugene area. There's 2 at the courthouse, 3, we'll talk about that, the third one on the next slide. One is a packet, AX25, which is slower than the VARA, and those are both at the courthouse. And right now at the county shops, there is one that supports VARA also. So currently on VHF, we're supporting 3 RMS servers in our area. There's one more in the works at the county shops. Whoops, what did we do here? So there's another mode that's called peer-to-peer. And this one actually does only use the internet.
Charles has got his hand up there. Jerry, he's got a question.
Okay, Charles, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the radio mail list of stations, and I noticed that if you're looking at the radio accessible ones, the only one within 3 miles of me is W7UG. So are the other four stations you mentioned, are they over Telnet, over the
No,
uh,
no, I don't know what you're looking at,
okay,
but W7EUG is this peer-to-peer situation.
okay,
That is used actually between Florence and the county. We need
hmm,
to connect to Florence. So we actually keep a session up and running at the courthouse, and we can remotely log into it and see emails. But there is a W7EUG -7, there's a W7EUG -8, and a W7EUG -10. So we use what are called SIDs to separate out all four of them. Does that make sense, Charles?
perfectly. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay. So this situation in this peer-to-peer is not optimal. It's only available on 10 meters, and we have to keep it running all the time. And 10 meters isn't very good during the day. So they do test it once a week, and we do get reports on it. But that's what the next one at the I'm sorry, at the county yards. Does everybody know where the county yards are? They're over there on North Delta, over by Home Depot. Does that help people? Anyway, that way we have a redundant system. For instance, if the big earthquake comes, I think the bridge over the Willamette over there on Beltline is going to be useless, but I imagine I can make it over to the courthouse. But I won't be able to make it over to the shops. So, but we do have a redundant system. Okay, now why do we use it? It just looks like any email program. Here is my setting. This is me. I can change settings on this one. We're not going to go into that. We can create messages by bringing this down and selecting new message. I can move them around. I can delete them. But this is the one we're going to talk about a little bit more because there are many what are called transports that we can use. So anyway, here we have three messages that came into me, and I was I was trying to go scroll down, talking about old habits. But anyway, that's what the main screen looks like. So why is Winlink used for emergency communications? It's because when you create a new email, you can say attach forms. And all uh, the forms that are required are built into there. We currently in Eugene have one we've modified for our use, and this is what it looks like. So when you generate a form, what it does is it launches the browser, whatever your default system browser is, and it brings up a emergency form, and you get to fill all these in. Previously, we would have to talk about these in a verbal. We'd say incident name, and then say it then, and then message number, and then to and from. So it took a long time. But with these emergency forms, we can get this information through very well. And these are actually put into a form called XML and sent with the email over to the receiving station. By the way, I want to reiterate, this was some fun that Matt and I were having, but this up here is very important. If you're just having a exercise, this is what you're going to do. Okay. We've figured out kind of that we can send emails with forms. Now, how do we connect to the RMS server? These multiple ways are called transport methods. Think about if you're going to the market. You can walk, you can drive, you can bicycle, you can bus, you can take a taxi, you can call an Uber. You're still going to the market. So the upper level thing of what you're going to do, your session, is there. The transport changes, and there are many transport ports available in Winlink. Each of these transports has advantages and disadvantages. One of the original transport was AX25. In the 70s, the International Standards Organization, as digital communications was coming to computers, created a specification called X.25 that allowed us to send digital information from point A to point B. It was well thought out. It has windowings, and what that means is every n frames, we're going to stop and make sure that the receiver received all n frames. Otherwise, they're going to be retransmitted. It's a little more complicated than that in the sense that each packet says next to send, next to receive. So it's almost done on a packet level rather on the window. But still, I hope you get the idea that this is very secure. Each frame also has checksums to validate the data. So each frame gets a checksum, and I know whether I've received the data without it being messed up. The theoretical speed of AX25 is 9,600 bits per second. Normally, though, in ham radio, when we use AX25, we get a throughput of 1,200 bits per second. Sounds like the old dial-up modem days.
Yeah, you remember 56K modems? Well, the AX25 is usually 1.2K, so it is sluggish, and you're very limited on how much data you can put through there in any given time frame. If you take more than 5 minutes, people get very, very irritated with you.
But the things it does add is security. So, for instance, I installed in the 70s, I installed an X25 network for Deutsche Ring in Germany. Deutsche Ring is like the State Farm in Germany. And financial institutions liked using X25 because they knew the data that they received was correct. So they gave up some speed in order to be sure of getting exact content. So the next thing that I'm skipping one and we'll get back to it, but the one that's very popular now is VARA. VARA is a private protocol developed by Jose Alberto Nieto Ross, AE5HVK, and it has theoretical throughputs of 25 to 10 baud on the VHF bands, and 84, 89 on the HF bands. He gave it out for free, but he does limit it unless you send him $70. Now, it's worth it. He has done a bang up job. So much so that the winlink.org group has literally brought it into their website. So 4 or 5 years ago, I used to have to get Winlink Express from the Winlink organization and Vara FM from the Vara organization. But now, if you go to winlink.org, it's all available there. The other thing is you can't, if you have the free one, you can't use SSIDs. So remember, before I talked about W7 EUG -7, W7 EUG -8, and W7 EUG -10. Those are the SSIDs, and we only need one license for them. Although W7 EUG -10 is a AX25 packet, but W7 EUG -7 and -8 are both Vara FM stations. And since we're fairly close, I have gotten really very close. I think I got 2300 baud when I was connecting to it with a 50K file. There's a lot of overhead that goes with it, so if you're just going to send an email, you're not going to get the high baud rate. But if you have a large file, it will work. Okay, the other one is Pactor, and Pactor is basically a hardware-based protocol that's based on frequency shift keying technology and has been used for Vara HF. It's hardware-based. The downside of it is that the machines are expensive. I just looked up. At the beginning of 2024, the FCC removed, removed the speed limitation that allowed Pactor's level 1, 2, and 3, and they are backwards compatible. So, but Pactor 4 supports 1800 symbols per second. Now that's a theoretical, and that's not a bit, that's a symbol. So I assume they mean that would be 8 bits per symbol in there. But you now can buy it. I just looked it up. These devices are fairly expensive. The current version of Pactor 4 from SCS PTC runs $2,000. So this is not something you're going to see in everybody's house. Whereas the the Vara devices, so they're called sound cards, they're in the $150 range. And there's finally, actually, if we have Winlink available, we can also use Telnet. Telnet was one of the first internet protocols published and accepted, and it's a client service protocol based on ASCII. And you say log in, it comes ask for your password. It's not very fast back then, but now now that we have faster devices. And when I say here it's based on the teletype over network, that's what telnet means. It's sending ASCII characters. However, you can escape it out, and you can send digital data, binary data, instead of ASCII. Now, finally, let's talk about Arden. And I spelled that wrong. It's AREDN. It's Amateur Radio Emergency Data Network. I'll fix that up. These are basically the FCC gave ham radio operators some Wi-Fi bands. So just like you have in your house, and allowed them to have higher power levels. So currently we're in the process of connecting everything in Eugene. And as soon as all the permits are going through, we're going to have a repeater up on Blanton Heights, which will get us both out to Florence and up to Salem. I think currently, Matt, do you know, are we connected to Salem?
No, I don't believe we are. I don't know. I could ask. They're on
Yeah.
the Salem net all the time. I could ask.
I just have a feeling that isn't there something up in the Coburg Hills that gives us a bounce to Salem? I don't remember exactly. But the
Could
thing,
ask them, or Nathan most likely would be the one to ask.
right, John or Nathan. Anyway, thanks. But the thing is, because it's Telenet and it's running at gigabit speeds, basically, it's wicked fast. So and a bit, so if you think of the west of the internet, one of the things that works very well is the routing protocols. So if I'm trying to get through to Matt and I'm talking directly, no, that's not a good one. I'm talking to Matt through the courthouse. If the courthouse goes down, the internet will reroute that information another way. And that's what we're trying to achieve all over Oregon to get this stuff together. And we'll have some very good Wi-Fi speeds when that happens. Okay, what equipment do we need? Well, in this case, I'm going to show you the idea that we need a Windows computer, 10 or 11. We need the application Winlink and Express. And depending on the sound card that you're using, and we call it a sound card, but it's really a D to A and A to D. So you may need the software in the computer to do that work for you. And we need the Vara HF or Vara FM software if we're going to use Vara. We need nothing if we're going to be using the Arden network. But in this case, we're going to assume we want Vara HF or Vara FM. And in that case, we're showing two different sound cards. One is the Signal Link that comes from Tigertronics. The other one is the DRA digital radio adapter. And because of some filtering involved in the Signal Link, the DRA actually is faster. So my setup, I'm using the DRA-50. And then you need a radio, and that's most modern radios, and that talks to an antenna. Now, the real issue and some expense when you go and buy these things are also called these these sound cards are also called terminal network controllers or TNCs, but they're really just sound cards. The cable between the TNC, the signal link and the sound card, and the radio is very picky and can be expensive. While Yaesu makes fantastic equipment, they use a 10-pin data cable. And for only $50, you can buy a 6 to 10-pin adapter from Yaesu. So when you go out and buy these sound cards, these TNCs, normally they'll sell you the cable to the radio. But if you happen to have a Yaesu, they're going to tell you buy the Yaesu converter. Because Windows 11 is so new, still it usually requires specialized USB drivers that can be tricky. You want to make sure that you download and install the USB driver before you plug the cable in. The other one is whether you have what's called digital out, this 10-pin data cable. And that means that when you go through that interface, there's going to be no equalized audio. So when you normally go through the speaker and the mic, there's circuitry in there that modifies the sound. The data ports on the radio, they have unequalized or flat audio. And how it's often called is a wide or 9600 baud mode. And that's going to get you the higher speeds than the 1200 baud. You'll see I don't have them here, but there's two different modes, narrow and wide. And if you want the best throughput out of our FM, you have to use this wide mode. So what that means is your HT, your handy-talkie, your radio handheld probably doesn't support the higher speed, the 9600 baud, because they normally have only mic in and speaker out. So they are limited to AX25 or a limited VARA FM. These are things, this is probably the most important slide in the whole deck. Now here, Craig asked, excuse me. So here's a situation that's pretty much the same, but what this is, it's an iPhone. I think that's a Kenwood handheld, and the TNC is something called the Microlink TNC4. Now, as you see, there is no connection between the TNC and the cell phone, and that's because this little device uses Bluetooth. So you connect your cell phone and the Radio Mail app to the TNC. You tune your radio, and if you'll notice, the output of that Microlink TNC4 goes to the audio in and audio out ports on the radio. But what this gives you is a very portable way to send forms and to send emails. The thing I want you to remember is that the internet is your friend, especially YouTube. So normally what you do is you say, okay, I've got a Yaesu FTM 500, I've got a Cantronics KPC 3 Plus, and I've got Windows 11. And you go over to YouTube and you type in KPC 3 Plus, Yaesu FTM 500, and you will find that 5 people will give you the settings that you need and the cables that you need and your whole setup. So I want to refer you to winlink.org and youtube.com. I've said a lot, so let's have some questions. We have about 15 minutes for questions here. Let me stop sharing. And that way I can see if any hands are up. Okay, Charles, what do you have to ask?
So when you're going to find, how do you go about finding out the frequency and all the rest of the stuff for a particular station like W7EUG minus 10? So where would you go to? I've got all the stuff you mentioned, like the phone and the mobile link D and the FT60, and so I wanted to connect. How do I know, figure out where to go, how to find out what the frequency is or what the settings are to make it work?
Okay, for the settings, you're going to want to go down to onto YouTube and search for setting it up. But for the frequencies, you want to go to winlink.org, and under the tools menu at the top, it'll say Vara, Telnet, blah, blah, blah. It'll have all of them. So in your case, it's going to be AX25 that you want to look at. And you got a map and you click on it and it'll give you the frequency. For instance, today, since I'm going to be setting up the HF station at the shops, I was looking at what frequencies are being used around us for Vara HF. So I'll pick a frequency that's not the same as everybody else is using. Any other questions?
Also, doesn't the packet hackers, they update the list with the local frequencies used, and they keep that updated regularly? Yes.
Yes and no. I find that page awfully confusing, and I've been screaming at them about making it more readable. Because the other thing you can do, and I didn't mention this, there are repeaters. So if I want to talk, originally my antenna on top of my house, I couldn't reach Matt. So I had to go to a repeater site. So when you specify, say W7EUG minus 8 via, and I'd put the name of a repeater in there, and you can look up all these names. So, like I said, someone else has their hand up here. So, Charlotte asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is this? Ha ha ha. It can be as easy as hard as you make it. So I don't know what your level of skill is here, but it's setting all the, especially in Vara, setting all you have to set the volume of your speaker and mic on your PC, and you have to set your but I will tell you this, Vara, once you learn your tool, Vara FM has this very neat little tool called ping. And what it'll do, it'll actually tell you, hey, your volume is too high on your PC, or your volume is too high on your signal link. And so it's not that hard, but you have to know where to look for this stuff. And either Matt or I or any of the Lasaro people would be more than glad to help you.
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
How do you know who's out there? I mean, do I just sort of send like a CQ out there, or do I have to send your call sign or your email name, or what do I have to do to get connected to you or send you a message?
So,
Should I take it or you, Gary?
okay. Basically, it's your call sign. So,
And how do I know who has the system or who's using it? Like
I don't-
if somebody sends my call sign on the system all day long looking for me, I'm not there. How do they know whether I'm going to be there, that it's been transmitted and accepted?
Matt, do you know, this may be available in the tools, who the registered people are? Do you know? Do you have are you there, Matt?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
you
it
don't
used to be
know.
with Packet, you could had this feature called mHerd, and you could get into a node elsewhere and type mHerd, and it would tell you what other nodes that distant station had heard. So you could get into that station, use it as a digipeater, and figure out what nodes are within the range of that node that you're in. That was in the old packet days, but that's becoming a thing of the past. With VAR FM, it does have digipeaters, at least with Winlink, but I don't really know where those are or
My,
what
my,
they are,
my
what their names are.
question, I guess, is if in an emergency situation and I want to send Matt a message that says, we need blood, how do I know that Matt got that message and is going to respond?
So one of the fields in the form does have return receipt.
Oh, okay.
So you would get it. But like I can tell you right now that, for instance, the Valley Radio Club does have a license for W7PXL. But except for the field day, I don't think anybody keeps a radio that listens to the call sign. So it's just a catch as catch can.
Uh-huh. Okay.
We do know that W7EUG will be active, and that's the EOC for the city. Two things here. I see Joe asks, I know you can use digipeaters for AX25. What about Vara FM? Yes. Matt, can you look up that page that you mentioned that has all that information? And then Nancy
Um,
had it
that,
and
that would be packethackers.groups.io. That's the one.
okay. Everybody get that? Why don't you write that into the can you put that in the Matt? Can you put that in the
Sure.
Jerry, Nancy's got her hand up too.
I know, I was just getting to it. I'm sorry, Nancy. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I'm just going to preface this all with the fact, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're
I
fine.
never know whether I've got my sound up right. So I'm quite naive on all of this, and I'm dealing with this from my experience as a net control and as a district net control, and the process we've used until now with the forms. So I guess when you first announced moving to this, I was thinking, oh, if somebody down the line from me has filled out this 213, passes it on to neighborhood net control, and then they're relaying it to the district net control, which is my current role. How does somebody down the line actually do a 213? Where does this happen? This process begin online? So that's one question.
Can you hold that? Let's handle them one at a time.
Okay.
Let's see if I can answer. At this point, it will only be the districts that are using the Winlink forms. In a perfect world, we'd all be infinitely wealthy and every one of us would be able to afford all this equipment. But at this moment, what our next goal will be, only the district net controls will be doing this to the EOC.
Okay. So I guess my next question then, being a district net control, is that my only equipment available to me right now is UHF VHF. And it looks like you really are getting most of your power out of this at HF and FM. And so I don't have any equipment like that.
No,
So
it's VHF, Nancy. And
okay,
we are going to the city and asking them for money to purchase radios, and we'll try and set it up so it's like a go box already set up for each of the districts. Does that help you?
it does a little bit. I guess I also, just in the imagery you use, since I'm so naive with all this equipment, is the antenna setup, because where I currently live, I have power lines surrounding me on two sides solidly. And anyone that's looked at my space says you can't have an antenna on your roof. So I'm looking at using something that's portable and that I can throw elsewhere on my equipment. How effective is it if you don't have something really high up there?
Let me ask you a question. Were you able to talk to the uh, uh, Norkenzie Church in the last examples? Nancy?
Is that where you were on our last drill?
That's where Andy was.
Okay. Yes, I was. And
Then
I
you-
was just
then you-
using a roll-up antenna.
That's fine then.
Okay.
That's all you need.
And yeah, and when you talk about sound cards, if you don't mind,
Right?
are you talking about, my idea of a sound card goes into an old PC, a big desktop thing that you can have cards in. If I'm dealing with a mobile size radio or a handheld, is that sound card independent?
The sound card is independent. It's about the size of your cell phone.
Okay,
So it's not a big deal.
okay. And yeah, so I'll let that go. I was just all of a sudden seeing a lot of, oh, can I make this ever work here? So thank you very much.
Because like I said, we're trying to go to the city to get some money so that there we go. There's a signal link, and what's the other thing below that? It looks like a switch.
Just a switch.
Yep. So by the way, the DRAs are faster than the signal link. But Andy, you had your hand up. Let's go to you. Andy, it's fun to say this. You're on mute.
Thanks. Uh, you answered what I was going to mention mostly about Nancy's question about we're going to the city and trying to get independent standalone packages that the district net control folks will actually sign out custody for from the city. So we're working up a price point that we will present to them so they can go out to FEMA to get or OEM to get a grant for 7 packets, one for the EOC and then for each of the district nets. And in those packets will be a laptop and everything that is needed, power supply. If we're going to use, and of course, Jerry and Matt and Craig, they're looking at these things to where, if need be, some kind of a tripod and antenna that can be put up quickly, that's user friendly and that can be taken down and then put away. So we're going to look at these things. So there's nothing really comes out of your pocket.
And did anyone think to consult me and Jerry about this?
Yes,
to
you and
review
I
this?
wrote it. You
Yeah,
and I wrote it, Matt.
You were involved with that, Matt. So anyway, So yeah, we're talking about that, and we will Jerry's going to give a presentation to the city in February on this, and so that's what we're working towards. And answering back to Kenton's question about blood, we don't want to get out of outside of the network that we have. We still go from neighborhood hams, as Nancy said, from neighborhood hams to the district net control and on up to the EOC. So we will still follow our model that we have as passing traffic within our network. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Listen, folks, we could go on for hours, but maybe we can talk about it on the radio next week. But I think this is a good time to stop for those people who want to make it over to the digital radio net that's on the Valley Radio Club repeater.
That's a surprisingly good place to bring your technical questions right now.
Yep. Thank you, Matt, and
Yep.
thanks everybody. That ends our meeting tonight.